If you're watching After the Sirens, you're already someone who understands that history isn't entertainment, it's instruction. What you're about to hear isn't recycled trivia or romanticized battlefield lore. These are heating methods documented during the Second World War era, rooted in physics and material science that were known at the time but largely dismissed, impractical for frontline doctrine, or ignored due to logistics and military bureaucracy. Yet today, without power, fuel grids or modern conveniences, these methods still work, and in some cases outperform what soldiers actually relied on. Before we begin, subscribe to After the Sirens if you value serious historical analysis and practical survival knowledge, and leave a comment as you listen, because this channel thrives on informed discussion, not passive viewing. Now, let's get into the substance. Why World War II? Heating knowledge still matters more than ever today. World War II forced nations to confront energy scarcity on an industrial scale. Armies moved faster than supply lines, winters arrived before infrastructure, and heating often meant the difference between operational readiness and collapse. Yet military doctrine favoured speed, mobility, and standardization over efficiency. That left entire categories of low-tech thermal solutions underused or ignored. Civil defence researchers, engineers, and even occupied civilians quietly refined these ideas. Today, with power outages, grid fragility, and fuel dependence increasing worldwide, these forgotten approaches offer something modern technology often can't: reliability without electricity. Earth-insulated shelter heating was dismissed by armies but mastered by civilians. One of the most effective heating methods during World War II was earth insulation, yet it was rarely adopted by active combat units. Soldiers slept in tents or surface barracks that bled heat rapidly. Meanwhile, civilians in Eastern Europe and resistance groups used partially buried shelters that maintained temperatures just above freezing, even in sub-zero conditions. Soil acts as a thermal buffer, holding steady temperatures year-round. Practically, this can be applied today by insulating the lower half of a shelter or home with packed earth, sandbags, or even stacked soil-filled containers. World War II-era tests showed that a shelter buried just 3 feet into the ground required up to 60% less heating input to maintain survivable temperatures. Body heat concentration techniques outperformed open-fire heating. Military doctrine emphasized fires, stoves, and fuel-burning heat sources. What it overlooked was the efficiency of heat retention through proximity and layering. Civilian air raid shelters often grouped people tightly, used shared sleeping platforms, and layered insulating materials beneath and above occupants. The combined body heat of several people could raise enclosed temperatures by several degrees overnight. Applied today, this principle means reducing heated space instead of increasing heat output. One room, sealed, insulated, and occupied efficiently, requires dramatically less energy than attempting to warm an entire structure. Heat-reflective materials were, actually known but rather underutilized in the field. Aluminum foil and metallized fabrics did exist during the Second World War, primarily being used in aircraft and radar technology. Field troops, however, rarely made use of reflective insulation, even though laboratory research at the time had already confirmed its effectiveness. Reflective surfaces essentially redirect radiant heat back toward the source instead of allowing it to escape. In practical terms, lining walls, ceilings, or even temporary shelters with reflective material behind insulation can, well, significantly reduce heat loss. During wartime blackouts, civilians would use polished metal sheets behind their stoves to improve heat distribution, all without needing additional fuel. That same method still works today, using foil-backed insulation or salvaged reflective materials. Slow-release masonry heating was, interestingly, abandoned for speed, not because it was ineffective. Traditional masonry stoves, which were quite common in Europe before the war, were dismissed by armies simply because they took time to build and heat. Yet these stoves could absorb heat from a short, intense burn and then release it slowly for up to 24 hours. Soldiers instead relied on continuous burning stoves that consumed more fuel and needed constant attention. In modern applications, this same principle can be recreated with stone, brick, or even stacked ceramic materials, heated briefly by a fire and then sealed into an insulated space. The physics really hasn't changed, only our patience has. Wartime textile science quietly solved cold exposure better than heaters. Military uniforms, focused on durability and uniformity, not really on thermal optimization. Meanwhile, civilian researchers and, some underground groups experimented with layered textiles, air gaps, and moisture control. The result was better heat retention without the need for active heating. Today, applying this knowledge means prioritizing insulation underfoot, managing moisture through breathable layers, and trapping air rather than just relying on heat sources alone. World War II data actually showed that insulated flooring reduced heat loss more effectively than additional wall insulation in cold shelters. Waste heat capture was, honestly, ignored despite its proven efficiency. Engines, cooking fires, and even candle flames produce waste heat that was rarely captured efficiently by soldiers. Civilians, on the other hand, routed stovepipes through living spaces, placed water containers near heat sources, and used thermal mass to store excess warmth. The modern application is pretty straightforward. Place water, stone, or any dense materials near a heat source to absorb and slowly release warmth. Even a small flame becomes significantly more useful when its heat is stored instead of just being vented away. Passive ventilation control, believe it or not, mattered more than heat generation. Many World War II shelters failed not because they lacked heat, but because uncontrolled airflow stripped warmth away. Civil defense manuals emphasize things like adjustable vents, fabric seals, and layered entryways to reduce convection losses. Soldiers, by contrast, often slept in draft-prone structures. Today, sealing gaps, controlling airflow, and using layered doorways can reduce heat loss dramatically without increasing energy use. This is honestly one of the most overlooked lessons of the era. These 7 heating principles were known during World War II, tested under extreme conditions, and largely ignored by military planners chasing speed and simplicity. Yet they remain some of the most reliable, power-free heating strategies available. History, as always, rewards those who study it seriously. If this guide added real value to your understanding, subscribe to After the Sirens, share this with others who respect historical knowledge, and please keep the conversation alive in the comments.